It'll never be the same because our brother's not here. DMX, you know, rest in peace. You know, we formed like a brotherhood. I didn't have to see him. I didn't have to call him. He didn't have to call me. When we saw each other though, it was that.
Right there.
It was that.
Okay, I see what's really good. You're trying to eliminate the competition. You know, because at first you retire, you know, then get me off the label. Now you're back rapping again. Okay.
What do y'all?
Nas is finally saying what a lot of people in the game have been whispering for years. Jay-Z and Beyonce aren't just competitive, they're straight up ruthless. And now Nas is pulling the curtain back, claiming both of them have gone out of their way to block other artists whenever they feel threatened, even DMX. Now, everybody knew there was tension between Jay-Z and DMX, but behind the scenes, it was way messier than fans realized. DMX himself even exposed how Jay allegedly played dirty by delaying the release of DMX's 6th album, all because Jay didn't want to go head-to-head. That delay wasn't just about business. It cut off DMX's momentum at a time when he was still one of the few rappers who could outsell Jay. It was calculated, cold, and career stalling. But get this, Nas says he got hit with the exact same power move. When he dropped Nasir, a Kanye West-produced album that had fans hyped for a major comeback, it was supposed to be his big return to the top. But just one day after Nasir dropped, Jay-Z and Beyonce came out of nowhere with a surprise joint album, Everything Is Love. And they didn't stop there. The whole rollout was locked and loaded with a slick music video already filmed in Paris. Ain't no way you just accidentally drop a full-blown visual album the day after one of your longtime rivals makes his comeback. Nas saw right through it, and he's making it clear this wasn't some random one-off. Jay-Z's been playing this game for years, and the pattern is impossible to ignore. What makes it even more wild, Nas wasn't even looking for drama this time. He had moved on from the beef, but clearly the Carters hadn't. Whether it was jealousy, insecurity, or straight-up pettiness, Nas is now calling out how Jay-Z moved behind the scenes, low-key blocking anyone he saw as a threat. And the boldest part, Jay allegedly used Beyonce's clean image and loyal fan base as a shield while he pulled strings in the background. And DMX.
I don't think one man can destroy another man's life. It's ultimately in your own decisions. You know, I had a lot of issues. Like I said, legal issues at the time. And, you know, my mind wasn't where I'm at now today. Like I used to have questions like, why every time my album dropped, Jay would drop right on top of me. He wouldn't let me breathe or right before me. Like I was always close, and I never understood that every single album that I dropped, Jay dropped right on top of me. And it was like, damn, like to have in-house competition at that magnitude was crazy. Jay already the boss, but I always thought that, like, let me breathe.
He's been back in the spotlight lately because fans are digging up old interviews where he was one of the only rappers brave enough to call Jay-Z out, loud and direct. Meanwhile, other artists stayed silent, scared of going up against the Carter Empire. But here's where it gets even messier. After DMX passed in April 2021, Jay-Z went on LeBron James's show and tried to spin the narrative, saying DMX was too competitive, but that it was always love between them. Except, that's not the full story. According to DMX himself, Jay was the one who kicked off the whole rivalry back in 2004, and somehow, that little detail didn't make it into Jay's version of events. When Jay-Z stepped in as president of Def Jam after Lyor Cohen, everything started to shift. And not in a good way for DMX. X had been the backbone of Def Jam, dropping 5 back-to-back #1 albums between 1998 and 2003. But the moment Jay got that top seat, DMX says he started noticing shady moves around his 6th album, Year of the Dog. Again. So what went down? According to DMX, Jay had just come out of retirement and didn't want any competition clouding his return. That meant blocking X's release and doing whatever it took to clear the lane for himself. That's when it all clicked for DMX. Jay wasn't just strategic, he was insecure. And X realized Jay was willing to sideline anyone, no matter how close, just to stay on top. That was the final straw for DMX, and he knew it was time to walk away from Def Jam for good. But it wasn't just X. This wasn't some isolated case. This was a whole pattern. Jay's been using his power behind the scenes for years to quietly knock down anyone that might challenge his spotlight. Take Beanie Sigel, for example. He recently spoke out and revealed that Jay would intentionally schedule his own album releases right around the same time Beanie's projects dropped, completely overshadowing him and cutting off his shine before it even had a chance to grow. And Beanie Sigel wasn't the only one feeling the heat. There's more. Insiders say Jay-Z made a habit of keeping artists close just long enough to benefit from their wave, then ghosting them the moment they became potential competition. It's like he built his empire by stepping over the very people who helped hold it up. People in the industry have whispered about this for years. How Jay would use his influence to control release dates, pull strings with execs, and even manipulate radio play to keep the spotlight all to himself. And if you were an artist on the rise, you either had to play the game his way or risk getting iced out completely. Even Rockefeller artists started catching on. There were stories about how talent like Freeway and Memphis Bleak weren't getting proper promo or support once Jay saw them as no longer useful to his bigger plan. He positioned himself as the king and made sure no one else got a shot at the throne. And when Beyonce became part of the picture, that power doubled. The two of them together had the kind of reach that could bury entire rollouts with a single surprise drop. So while Jay might act like the businessman who lets the music speak behind closed doors, he was making sure only his music got heard loud and clear. And now people are finally speaking up. Not just artists, but producers, insiders, and even ex-label staff. They're saying Jay-Z's moves weren't just competitive. They were cold-blooded. He knew exactly how to twist the system in his favor, using timing, influence, and access to lock others out. And because he stayed quiet and polished on the outside, most fans never saw what was really going on. Even Nas is pointing out how Jay would keep things looking clean on the surface while pulling strings in the background. He'd play the businessman role while low-key throwing obstacles in people's paths. And it worked, over and over again. By the time other artists realized what was happening, their momentum was already gone. And let's not forget how Jay always had this image of being calm and calculated, never the type to cause drama. But behind that calm, he was outmaneuvering anyone who could threaten his spot. One day, it's DMX getting pushed out. The next, it's Beanie. Then Nas. Who's next? And with Beyonce by his side, most people were too intimidated to call him out, afraid of the backlash from her massive fan base. But now that the silence is breaking, the industry's starting to look real different. People are finally waking up to how long this power play's been happening and who's really been pulling the strings. But here's where it gets even crazier. Some folks are now questioning whether Jay-Z and Beyonce's surprise album drops were ever really about art or love like they claimed. Because let's be real, the timing was too perfect every single time.
When Jay signed his contract, the big one was with Beyonce. Mm-hmm. When he signed that contract, the marriage contract, he got trophies. Now those fucking trophies, trophies came rolling in, buddy. He started getting Grammys left and right, man. I mean, look, if you look at his career,
This guy. Wow. You're gonna let him say that?
Jay was getting Grammys.
He had one.
Exactly.
He had
And
one.
he ain't show up.
He has like 20 now.
Hold on.
He had like 18 since he's been down. Look, he had one, bro. Hard Knock Life.
Hold on. You're not wrong. At the same time.
After that, he got them shits. He's like drinking. His pictures with him like fucking thinks the cup.
Wait a minute. So you're saying the success is derived from the marriage?
I've absolutely been treated differently.
The accolades.
Because he's no
marriage.
longer viewed as what, like a street or gangster rapper. Now he's viewed as a businessman, entrepreneur, family man.
And the biggest ones because of the position Beyonce's.
Oh wow! So that's the deal he signed, huh?
Yeah, that's the deal. Like, the other ones didn't count as much as that one did.
It wasn't just a creative choice. It was a calculated strike. Remember when Everything Is Love dropped out of nowhere? The same week as Nas' big comeback with Nasir? That wasn't some romantic artistic moment. It was a straight-up industry checkmate. And this ain't the only time it happened either. Jay and Bey have built a whole pattern of these surprise releases, and every time, someone else's project ends up getting drowned in the noise. Artists have started peeping the pattern. One minute you've got buzz, a rollout, media attention, then boom, the Carters drop a bomb, and suddenly your moment's gone. Like clockwork. And what's even more wild, they never acknowledge it. They just smile for the cameras, post cute vacation pics, and let the media call it genius marketing. But behind the scenes, careers have been stalled, rollouts sabotaged, and real opportunities snatched away in silence. The image might be clean, but the moves? They're as cutthroat as it gets. And more people are finally brave enough to say it out loud. Jay and Bey play the long game, and they don't play fair. And who could forget Cameron? That infamous 106 and Park moment. Yeah, Jay-Z crashed Cam's interview without warning, just popped up on set like it was his show. Cam was there to promote his own album, but Jay hijacked the spotlight and completely flipped the energy. It was slick, calculated, and totally unexpected. They asked Cam, "So we heard you're working on another album. Can you tell us about it?" But before Cam could even breathe, Jay was already making it his moment. That wasn't a coincidence. That was a classic Jay-Z move. See, Jay never wanted another artist shining brighter than him. But instead of going bar for bar or letting the music speak, he used sneaky tactics to block people from even getting close to his level. And nobody knows this better than Nas. He's lived it multiple times. Jay's been playing this spotlight-snatching game with Nas for decades. When Nas dropped Stillmatic in December 2001, a major comeback moment, Jay conveniently released his MTV Unplugged performance just 1 week later. Fast forward to 2004, Nas came through with Street's Disciple, and boom! Jay teamed up with Linkin Park for Collision Course right after. It didn't stop there. In 2007, Nas dropped his greatest hits album, and like clockwork, Jay slid in with American Gangster just days later. You'd think that was enough, right? Nope. In 2018, Nas finally released his Kanye-produced album, Nasir, and less than 24 hours later, Jay and Beyonce surprised the world with Everything Is Love, complete with that ultra-polished Apshti video shot inside the freaking Louvre in Paris. And just when folks thought the pattern was done, Nas came back with the Lost Tapes 2, and wouldn't you know it. Right after that, Beyonce and Jay-Z dropped The Lion King, The Gift. The timing is way too consistent to be a coincidence. When all these surprise drops started landing right after Nas released his projects, fans started questioning the timing. And Nas made it very clear, this was not just a bunch of coincidences. And he's not the only one thinking that. But there's another layer to the drama, one that Nas hasn't been shy about calling out. He's been saying for years that Jay-Z uses Beyonce's squeaky clean image as a shield to cover up his own dirty moves. And Nas has never been the type to stay quiet about industry secrets, especially when others tiptoe around them. One of the most jaw-dropping moments came years ago when he showed up on Wendy Williams' radio show and let it all out. He didn't just accuse Jay-Z of shady business games, he dug even deeper, calling out how Jay allegedly stayed silent when it came to the disturbing rumors about R. Kelly. Nas claimed Jay knew exactly what was going on behind the scenes, all the red flags, all the whispers, but still moved forward with their Best of Both Worlds project. Why? According to Nas, Jay was chasing the money and willing to look the other way to keep the profits flowing. And Nas wasn't done. He even suggested that Jay's silence might have been about more than just protecting a bag, hinting that maybe Jay had his own skeleton stashed away. But instead of owning up or speaking out, Jay-Z pulled another sleek move. He helped finance the surviving R. Kelly documentary years later, flipping the narrative and aligning himself with justice and accountability. Just like that, he reinvented his public image as Family Man Jay, Beyonce's husband, father of 3, and a symbol of Black wealth and legacy. And it's not just Nas throwing shade anymore. 50 Cent recently joined in, straight up calling out Jay for hiding behind Beyonce's public glow, even claiming that their marriage looks more like a business deal than a real love story. And in another interview, 50 Cent dropped another bomb, claiming that a big chunk of Jay-Z's Grammy wins might not have even happened if he wasn't tied to Beyonce. That's a bold statement, but it ties everything together. Let's bring it back to DMX, because X was one of the first artists to see through Jay's slick moves and wasn't afraid to call him out publicly. Just like Nas, DMX knew what was happening behind the scenes, He saw how Jay used his power at Def Jam not to build others up, but to push potential threats out the way. Both DMX and Nas refused to bow down to Jay, no matter how deep his industry ties ran. And that's where their mutual respect came from. They weren't just rappers, they were truth tellers, standing up to someone who had the entire game in a headlock. While others stayed quiet or played along, Nas and X spoke up, and they paid the price for it. So when DMX passed away, it hit Nas differently, not just because he lost a friend, but because he lost one of the only real ones who saw through Jay's game and had the guts to say it out loud. Together, they exposed how deep Jay-Z's calculated tactics went, from delaying releases, blocking projects, and timing his drops to overshadow others, all while hiding behind Beyonce's image to keep his brand spotless. But now it's all out in the open, so let's talk about it. How much of Jay's success is really just strategy? Do you think Nas and DMX were right to call him out? Or is this just how the music business works? And what role do you think Beyonce's image plays in protecting Jay-Z's legacy? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.